All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming on this awful snowy day. My name is Mike Wozniak, and I serve as the coordinator of leadership and programming in the Student Involvement in Parent Programs office. In the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds, we will learn a new lesson on leadership, as well as some advice to guide our personal and professional development. For today's speaker, please join me in welcoming the director of the Writing Center here at UND and the current Staff Senate President, Anna Kinney.
Hi, everyone. Can we just take a second to give Mike Wozniak a round of applause? He's done a really outstanding job coordinating this with his team. And thank you all so much for coming out today, for braving the squall to spend a little bit of time thinking about reflection. So I want to start by giving a little bit of insight into my understanding of leadership. I believe very much that we all, in every position, in every place, all of us have the capacity to answer the call to lead, and we do. We answer that call every day in some capacity. But I believe that the first step to outstanding leadership and the core characteristic to a great leader is somebody who is committed to the process of learning. And reflection is one of the most important parts of learning. So I'm very excited to share with you some of my thoughts on reflection. For me, reflection and reflective writing specifically is both a personal interest, it is a personal commitment, but it is also my professional, it's my job to help people think well about their thinking, the work that they do, and the writing that they do. So with that, I'd like to start by saying that reflection is learning, and reflective learning specifically is active learning. There is no way to be a passive reflector of our life. And so when we talk about the benefits of active learning, we're often talking about the benefits of reflection through that process. And reflective thinking is also critical thinking. So often I hear from students or faculty or my colleagues how tricky it is to talk about critical thinking, to define critical thinking, and importantly, how to nurture and foster critical thinking in our students and our colleagues and our peers. And one of the best ways to do that, one of the most practical ways to do that, is to help engage in a process of reflection. But you don't have to take my word for it. I won't bore you with all the research, but there is decades of educational research, of cognitive research, of psychology that really exemplifies how reflection and reflective practice make us better people, make us better learners, and help us move through the world more intuitively and explicitly. And one of the ways that reflective practice helps is that we know it leads to improved ability to self-assess. And self-assessment is when we're able to determine our successes and critically navigate our failures based on all of the criteria by which those are measured. We also know that reflection is a core part of metacognition and developing the ability to be a metacognitive learner. And a metacognitive learner is somebody who both understands their thinking process and they understand other processes like writing. Why did I make this move? Why did I navigate this context with these tools? We also know that reflection and reflective practice leads to much deeper understanding and much greater retention of knowledge. In fact, there's a lot of research that suggests that people who participate in a reflective activity after a class or after a professional development opportunity or even after a meeting, a conversation, retain somewhere between 10 and 35% more of that experience than their peers who did not participate in reflective practice. And who doesn't want to remember more of your life? We also know that reflective practice leads to the ability to understand how skills transfer between different contexts, different problems, different environments, and different needs. Employers say all the time how important it is for students to understand the transferability of the core skills that they learn in places like their classrooms. We also know that reflection leads to enhanced problem-solving abilities. Reflection allows us to zoom in and zoom out on different experiences and get new perspectives, understand how things worked, where things went wrong, and then apply those into new situations and new contexts to solve problems that they may have never experienced before. We also know that people that participate in reflective practice have greater motivation, they have greater engagement, and they're often more satisfied, both in their work and in their life. And finally, when we're better able to understand our own practice, our own process, our own thinking, our needs, we're better able to understand others. And that makes us better able to collaborate and work in teams and lead teams. I'm really privileged in my position. I get to talk to a lot of faculty and a lot of students and a lot of staff. And if you've talked to me, you've probably heard me talk about reflection. And oftentimes it's met with some amount of skepticism. Faculty members often share, how am I supposed to grade this? Or my students don't take this seriously. Or sometimes I hear, all that squishy stuff is saved for English classrooms. From students, I hear, why am I being graded on my feelings? Why am I being graded on what I think? And these critiques, and in some cases misunderstandings of what reflection is, they stem from a similar place. And so I thought it would be helpful to share a pretty easy way of thinking about reflection. And I'm going to share a little bit about what I see from my perspective of where we get stopped in this process. So this is my favorite way of talking about reflection. We have to start with what, right? That's a description of the event, the experience, the problem, whatever it is. This is almost always where students stop, right? Go to an event. Some of you are here and we'll have to write a little bit of reflection about this talk that you're at. And you might describe the things I say, you might pull some quotes. And that's a wonderful starting point. We need that in order to really engage and think reflectively. But it can't stop there. We need to move to the next stage, which is so what? So what is such an important question that we need to be bringing often to our lives. And that's wondering, what does this mean now? How has this changed my learning? Why did I see it this way, right? What do I understand now? That's analysis. This is where things get much more challenging, especially if you're navigating this for the first time. But that tension is the point. And then finally, we need to think about now what? And that's where critical reflection comes in. Now that I understand this, now that I see this, what am I going to do next? So in other words, reflection must, by necessity, include the past, the present, and the future. If your reflection is only covering what you did, you're missing all of the really important critical reflection. And it's going to be a lot harder to kind of transfer some of that learning into new contexts and to understand the value of what we learned in those spaces. But reflection shouldn't end once you get your words on the page. In fact, reflection is best served as a multi-course meal. We need to return to that. We need to sort our ideas into themes or buckets, look for overlapping or conflicting ideas or feelings that we experience, identify themes, and more importantly, find the outliers. That's often where innovation or something truly special lies. Once we start to do that, we can analyze a bigger picture. We can understand situations differently, see patterns. We can start connecting new information to our existing knowledge. And we can start actively transferring those skills into new and diverse contexts. And for those of you looking at the screen right now, you'll notice those words in red, those are all Bloom's taxonomy of higher thinking, right? This is what your education is meant to help you do well. And it's also what is needed for an engaged citizenry. We need to participate in these activities all the time. So for those of you that often feel like reflection is daunting, we almost always wait to reflect until our performance evaluations are due. We've been asked to do so in an assignment. We have to prepare for a job interview, all of those places where we start talking about it. I want to really emphasize and hope that I can persuade you that reflective writing is never a test. Reflective writing isn't for you to prove what you know. It isn't for you to be the authority or the expert or to demonstrate your dominance in some area. It is a gift. And when you're asked to be reflective, when you're asked to think reflectively and given the time and space to do that, it is because we care deeply about what you think, how you feel, what your hopes are, what your goals are, what you're worried about. If you Google what it takes to be a great leader, you're going to find hundreds of articles that say great leaders are great storytellers. And they are. The difference often between a good leader and a great leader is their ability to tell a story to a variety of audiences and for diverse purposes. I've watched leaders sell things like batteries, right? Because they understand how they lead. They understand why they lead, not just that they lead. So reflection is necessary for leaders and necessary in becoming a good storyteller. I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Work of Art. It's by Adam Moss, if anyone's interested in following up later. And it is a pursuit to understand what happens when people are creative and create works of art or craft. We never really know what happens privately as artists and actors and chefs do what they do. And so Moss has set out to interview dozens of people whose life's work is creating works of art. And there's one quote from this book. It's an interview with Samin Nosrat, who wrote Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. And in the introduction, before the interview, Moss says this. He says, "As for the elements that led to her book, there are many, but chiefly was the fact that she was able to envision something new at the exact moment before she became too experienced to understand it had value." I read that like 8 times. I've been carrying that around with me for about 4 months now, constantly thinking about what it means to see something with beginner's eyes. And that's what reflection affords us. It reminds us of where we've come from. It reminds us of where we're going. And it reminds us that not everyone we talk to is in the same place or has had the same experiences as we have. And so it gives us a wonderful gift to look back and see things with beginner's eyes and to connect better with the people that we work with. So I talked a little bit about why reflection, all of those different things that research shows us makes us better people. But how do we get started? I'm going to say there is no right way to do this. I gave you all an example of starting with the past, thinking about what it means to you now and what you're going to do with it. But in order to become a reflective practitioner, there's 3 things that are necessary to develop this practice. And the first is to create time for reflection. Reflection should be explicit, it should be intentional. And I hear from writers all the time, I just don't have time to write. I just can't find the time. The sad truth is you will never find time. You will never be able to just eke something out. You must make it. You must defend it ruthlessly. Habitual thinking, habits are just that. They are patterns of choices that become our understanding and the way we move through the world. So you must make time. You must take it seriously. The second thing is that you must remain in a constant problem-solving position. That's why we reflect. We're not just documenting our lives, we're making our lives better. We do that by asking questions of how and why. These are the hardest questions that you will ask in your life. It's why it's so annoying when our 2, 3, 4-year-olds are constantly like, why, how? They're desperate to understand the world that they live in. And as adults, sometimes we lose that wonder. And finally, we must question the status quo. And what I mean by this is the way things are don't always have to be the way things are. A lot of these things we don't question, we don't interrogate. Real leaders, real innovators, real creatives ask what if. They ask it 1,000,000 times. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you may not agree with, but my perception of reflection is it is a radical act of love. And I'm using love here in the same way that Bell Hooks does, as an action. Love is a verb. It is about being present in our own lives. It is about taking the time to truly understand ourselves so that we can better understand the people around us. It's an investment and a commitment to our future and to the future of our worlds. It's a way to honor our past. It's a way to forgive our mistakes. And it's a gift to our community because it's through reflection and care that comes from reflection that we are able to build empathy, we're able to build compassion, we're building capacity to understand the world through somebody else's perspective. And on the subject of love, I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about writing, because it's something that most of us don't love. And my dirty secret is that I don't really love writing all that much either, which is often surprising to people, and let me provide some context for that. I don't look at my writing calendar with joy and think, boy, I can't wait to get home and start generating text. I have terrible writing anxiety. I cry when I write. I put it off. One of the best pieces of advice I ever received was that the choices we make build habit, and the choices we don't make also build habits. So choosing not to write isn't just a lost opportunity to develop a writing habit, it's a choice to develop an avoidance in writing. So there's a hard truth. But I'm gonna say something that might raise tension in some of the people in the audience here. And I hope it does, because you can reflect on it after this conversation. But I believe that a lot of us need to actively heal from the trauma that's been inflicted upon us by the enterprise of academic writing. And what I mean by that is that often in academic writing, we've disembodied and dehumanized our voice in the pursuit of empirical, objective positioning. I talk to a lot of people who say, how am I supposed to write this? I can't use I. And so to everyone out there, I want to remind you that there are almost no hard and fast rules of writing. We believe a lot of things, and we've been told even more things. But the truth is that the different choices we make are based on rhetorical effectiveness for the different contexts that we exist in, and the different audiences we write for, and the different purposes that we pursue. You can start a sentence with but. You can start a sentence with and you should. You should explore all of the tools you have in your writing toolbox, and you should question all of the things that you've been told about writing, because there's a time and place, and there's also a time and place to explore your voice. And the truth is that writing is a lot of things. Most importantly, writing is process. Writing is thinking. We think as we write, and if you outsource that to something else to avoid that, you're losing a chance to think deeply about problems that matter. Writing is human, and I recognize deeply that now we have introduced machines that can also write. And that's why it's such a paradigm shift, because writing has always been intimately human, and it still is. Writing is always about a connection. It's a relationship between a reader and yourself. Writing is also discovery. It is the process of learning something new. I'm sure everyone in this room has gotten to the conclusion of something you're trying to write, and you're like, that's what I was trying to say this whole time. It's because you thought your way there. You found your way there. Writing is also hard and, frankly, unpleasant. It's alienating, and it's isolating, and it's a whole bunch of things. But it is an opportunity to explore our world meaningfully. And revision, which is the most important part of writing, is also a gift, because it's an opportunity to take the ideas of past you and resituate them with all of your new understandings that you learned through that process. So I mentioned machine writing, and if you know me, you know that we weren't going to get through this 1883 talk without some acknowledgement of the current situation. And I want to encourage all of you to think about writing, reflective writing, as an opportunity to explore your humanity. At this moment in time, maybe more so than ever in history, the things that make us uniquely human, our ability to understand our feelings, to understand and interrogate our connections to others, to seek those connections, that's going to be the thing that determines our shared future together. There are so many opportunities to think about this well, to explore this as we explore reflective writing. So I hope that you can see reflective writing as an opportunity to celebrate your voice, to develop your voice, and for some of you to liberate your voice from the things we've been told about what it means to be a writer, what it means to write. Again, your voice is a gift, and at this moment, it's a gift for everyone. And finally, I want to share another gift with you, and that's that I created a custom GPT. This is AI that will provide reflective writing prompts for you. This is based on 5 different types of reflective modeling that have reflective prompts that has been proven over and over again through research and experimentation to help the process of meaningful, deliberate, intentional, thoughtful, reflective process. You don't need to have a paid ChatGPT account to use these. You just need to have an account to sign in. So you can say, can you provide reflective prompts? I had a hard day at work today. You don't have to share anything about your life with this particular bot. It's just going to provide guided, facilitated prompting to guide you through that experience. Okay, thank you all so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right. Thanks to all of you for coming. This was our last 1883 speaker for the semester, but we will resume January 15th with the alumnus and director of marketing for the Alara Center, Matthew Turnus. Have a great rest of your semester and have a safe and happy winter break.